Before we continue with the analysis, I want to talk to you guys about JerseyFIFA.com, the home of all of the greatest football kits. Whether that's the latest home shirts, the latest away shirts, tracksuits, or even retro kits, Jersey FIFA has a bit of everything. There really is something for everyone, so if you are interested, then make sure to use the link in the description down below and head to JerseyFIFA.com. Hey guys, welcome back to the AJ Analysis channel, where today we have a bit of a weird video for Manchester United fans. Before the match against Leeds, you guys would have been demanding a win. At about the 50th minute, you would have been so pleased with a draw at 2-0 down at the time, and then it gets to full time, and in the end it's actually disappointing to only come away with a point. So it was a very weird night for Manchester United. In my opinion, they played the better football and deserved to win. However, there was probably, a total of 4 minutes in this game where they simply weren't good enough, so it is hard to win when you play like that. And before we get into the tactics, I think this squad let themselves down a little bit. And that sounds a bit harsh to say because they've been so good this season, made so much progress. But I think they let themselves down because you can't play a derby against a team like Leeds at Old Trafford where you know they're going to be up for it and concede a chance, let alone a goal in the first minute, and then in the second half concede another chance in the first minute and concede a goal 3 minutes into the half. I done a tactical preview the other day, and one of the things I was talking about was a need to be sharp on the ball. Manchester United were anything but that for those opening few minutes of both halves, and you just can't do that at this level. They got punished, and ultimately that cost them all 3 points. However, what was also difficult for the side was the pressing system that they were faced with, and it was exactly what we were talking about in our tactical preview. Now, in that preview, I done it to try and cover both this game and the one coming up at the weekend. However, if you would like an updated preview almost, talking about what Ten Hag needs to change for the weekend game, let me know in the comments down below, and I will get that recorded for you guys. However, before we do that, we need to talk about what went wrong for Manchester United, and I'll be honest, it was really predictable. It was what we were talking about in our preview. It was what I was saying was going to happen. And that was Leeds initially letting the centre-backs have the ball and then pressing in wide areas. So let's look at how that worked. So Manchester United started off the game by trying to build it in a back three. And I actually don't think that's a bad idea, using a wide back three to try and build out like this. However, the problem was Bamford and Harrison were doing a good job of stopping Sabitzer getting the ball. And we saw Luke Shaw tucking in here. But the problem was that Gnonto on Dalot, with Dalot tucking in slightly, it allowed Leeds to have this really narrow pressing shape and almost be 3 for 3 with the Manchester United defenders, with Dalot almost bringing the extra man over. But also, all three of these Leeds players are very good at shadow pressing, meaning that yes, they apply pressure to the ball, but the whole time they are also cutting this passing lane into Sabitzer. So when the ball goes across, Harrison might come out and press, but he's also making sure to cut off that pass to Sabitzer behind him, whilst also applying pressure to the ball. And as soon as the ball went into these wider areas, this is when Leeds pounced. Say the ball might come into somewhere like this. Rashford playing out of position, which I will come back onto. I think Ten Hag got that wrong. Leeds winning the ball back in these areas and then pouncing forward. And for the first 15 minutes, there was a real disconnect in this Manchester United team. We kind of had this 3-1 shape, sure, a little bit higher, but this 3-1 was stranded because the defenders were struggling to get out from the press and the midfielders were simply too high up the pitch to really help them out. This meant that time and time again in that first 10 minutes, Leeds would win the ball in this area or somewhere like, hang on, I can't move the ball, somewhere like this with Adams and McKennie, two brilliant athletes in the middle of the park, making life really difficult for Manchester United, turning the ball over in these areas and then getting at the defence. And the lack of Casemiro was there for all to see. Casemiro is a brilliant holder midfielder that breaks up play in this area. Sabitzer is not the same. Yes, he puts in a good defensive work, a good defensive shift, I should say. However, sitting in this position when he's got players like McKennie and Adams running at him while you're making your Premier League debut, it's not going to end particularly well, and United just simply got overwhelmed in these areas. Now, you can't really point fingers at Ten Hag, I know some people will. However, if you take the two starting midfielders out of most teams, they're going to struggle, and that is what United have at the moment with no Casemiro or Eriksen. If you went to Arsenal and took out Xhaka and Partey, they would struggle massively. So it is normal for Manchester United to struggle, and Ten Hag really didn't have much of a choice. He couldn't even bring someone like Scott McTominay in. This was literally the only midfield he could really go with. If you want to see, again, a video on how United could try and cope without Casemiro for the next couple of games, let me know in the comments down below. But this meant that without Casemiro in here winning the ball back, and with United just struggling to get the ball forward, Leeds were winning the ball in these areas time and time again, kept getting into really good positions. Of course, in that first minute, we saw it, Gnonto firing into the low corner at David De Gea's near post. Really good start for Leeds, but Manchester United were really struggling. As the half progressed a bit, Manchester United did start to grow into the game, and it's because they made a small tweak. Dalot moved from this narrower position into more of a wide right-back role, which now means that this winger isn't following Dalot inside, he's now outside. This now leaves Leeds with a front two, which now means that Manchester United could create this 3 versus 2 situation, and they seem to work that a little bit better. It still wasn't completely ideal, because again the Leeds players were better at shadow pressing. However, it did finally allow United a way to get the ball into Sabitzer, and then United could come out wide and look to build possession in these areas. However, again, there was still a real disconnect, and also what didn't help was that this was, for some reason, a night where 3 or 4 United players chose not to turn up. Fred ended this game with 63.7 pass completion, 63.7 pass completion for an experienced midfielder playing professional football, let alone Premier League football for Manchester United, is criminal. Now, it feels harsh on Fred because he has been very good this season, but this performance was genuinely woeful. It was one of the worst performances I've seen from an individual this season. Like I said, I felt sorry for him because he has been good this season, and we just know that this isn't his strength. He isn't a player which is good when pressed, but again, Ten Hag had no other choice. But he really was not very good in this game, and it did hurt Manchester United massively. Because they, again, once they got into these areas, they couldn't then progress the ball forward. You also had Bruno Fernandes overturning possession too much, another player who had less than 80% pass completion. So again, United are trying to go forward a bit too quickly, and basically it just didn't work. The one player who did bring a bit of calm and a bit of quality was Sabitzer, the only one of the 3 midfielders to end the game with 80% passing or higher. And what he done quite well was allowed Manchester United to combine down this side and then switch to play with long passes, or the ball could go into Luke Shaw, who could then get it out this way. And what I was talking about again in my preview is that Leeds do defend on one side. So if you can do this, if you can get the ball in these areas, let's move the ball in these areas and then switch it to the other side, you can get at this Leeds team, and this is what Manchester United done perfectly. And then you've got Garnacho up against Ayling, you're backing Garnacho in that battle. But again, unfortunately, Garnacho was one of the players who just didn't really turn up in this game. Now, he's getting a lot of criticism online. You're an idiot if you're doing that, basically. He's an 18-year-old. What do you expect? He's 18 years old. Of course, he's going to be raw. He looked a bit rushed at times, but that is completely normal for an 18-year-old playing his first season in the Premier League. So for people to really be not just criticising him, but abusing him, just absolute morons. Because a couple of weeks ago, he was getting called generational because he scored a couple of goals. So, people just daft, really. But it was a problem for Manchester United because they were working this, they were getting into this good position, and like from Ten Hag's point of view, he actually coached a good performance. Tactically, he set United up well. In terms of XG, United were by far the better team. However, just individuals weren't quite good enough. Fred wasn't quite good enough. I thought Dalot at right back looked rusty, returning from injury. Shaw on the ball has had better performances, although in spells was still very good. Bruno Fernandes just losing the ball a bit too much, and then Garnacho not really on it with his dribbling. And the problem for me, though, was the fact that Rashford was on the right wing. It just took him out of the game. First half, we did not see Marcus Rashford, but second half, there were, of course, changes. So during the second half, Manchester United made changes, and this also happened at the same time that Leeds started to tire. The intensity with which they were playing with was incredible during that first hour or so, but the last 30 minutes, they did start to fatigue, and they just drop off a couple of yards when they do that. They do just come a little bit deeper, and suddenly they're not putting quite as much pressure on the ball as high up the pitch, and it makes ball progression much easier for Manchester United, and that was very much what we saw. And Lisandro Martinez and Varane were the highest 2 players for ball progression, both with their passing and their carries, and it really showed later on in the game. And this got Manchester United right back into it, and firstly, I think the squad deserves credit for getting themselves back into it. At 2-0 down, when you've conceded 2 goals early in halves, you could feel sorry for yourself. But they didn't. They put a shift in to get themselves back into the game. However, in the big moments, there was still just a general lack of quality. Again, someone like Bruno Fernandes just couldn't quite find his passing on this night. Fred wasn't connecting with players, and it did create a problem. However, luckily, Manchester United have some players who are capable of moments of magic. And first of all, we saw Facundo Pellistri doing some excellent work down his right-hand side. I was really impressed with his cameo. The ball comes back to Dalot, who crosses it in, and who is there to head it into the back of the net? Marcus Rashford. This was pretty much the first cross that Manchester United put in all night. They don't cross it when there's 6'7" Weghorst in there. No. Wait till Rashford's in there, then start crossing it. And normally that would sound daft. However, Rashford, his header was absolutely brilliant, and it got Manchester United right back in the game. And then after this, we saw Jadon Sancho. And it really felt like, it sounds daft to say, it really felt like we did see the Jadon Sancho. Now, of course, there's been a lot of talk about his form at Manchester United, and now he's had a few months off to kind of get himself back almost. This looked much more like a Jadon Sancho performance that we were all expecting when he signed. Because he was getting into the exact same situations that Garnacho was. He's getting the ball in this area with Ayling backed up towards goal. And every time he got the ball, he just went at him. He had him backpedaling towards his own box and genuinely was absolutely brilliant. He completely changed this game. He got Manchester United on the front foot, now controlling the play. And Leeds really were becoming quite camped in their area. And Sancho just deserves so much credit. One for psychological reasons, getting himself back into this position. Of course, Ten Hag deserves credit for that as well. But his performance, getting the ball in and driving at the defence, getting Leeds backtracking and then getting into these areas, with Shaw also overlapping him. He was just absolutely brilliant. He of course got a goal, which was well deserved, and it was great to see that smile on his face. Yes, Manchester United didn't get the win, but this was maybe just as important. If United can get themselves a confident Jadon Sancho, then they have a real world beater on their hands. This guy has so much talent. So, good and bad, like positives and negatives from the night, but this was one of the massive positives. The negative, however, was that then United needed to kick on. They were 2-2, they had time to get a winner, but the problem is the squad depth just hit them like a truck because we had to see Lindelof come on into midfield in place of Sabitzer just because Sabitzer was fatiguing. Like I said, it was his first Premier League start. And the problem now is Leeds are dropping a little bit deeper because, of course, they were 2-0 up. It's now 2-2. They don't want to lose this game after being 2-0 up, not when you are where they are in the league. So they start to drop a little bit deeper, and now you've got to try and break them down. And the problem that Manchester United had was your double pivot is now Victor Lindelof and Fred to try and break a team down. And to be honest, the video can stop there. Lindelof and Fred, both good footballers, both done good jobs for Manchester United this season, but breaking down a low block with fine passes into the box or making the right decision, I mean, Fred must have had 20 shots in that last 10 minutes. It just didn't really work. He didn't have a good night. It's one to forget for him. Kind of one to forget for Manchester United a little bit, apart from probably for Jadon Sancho. I thought United, again, in terms of the expected goals, they were the better team. They controlled most of the match after that first 10-minute spell. They looked a better team. They were creating chances. But there was just something not quite right. The midfield performance wasn't good enough. And again, we saw that Casemiro hole in the team. So, at the end of the day, a draw is probably a good result. It's enough to keep them in a nice position in the top 4 race. But they will want revenge at the weekend. And Ten Hag in particular will be demanding something very different of his players at the weekend. Because you cannot start 2 halves of football out in professional football, but certainly in the Premier League, the way that Manchester United did. And I'm sure he will not let that happen again. But yeah, that's all I've got to say for today's video. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Who disappointed you for Manchester United? Who impressed you? What did you think of the Leeds approach? It was almost exactly what we called in our tactical preview. Let me know what you think. Are you happy with the point in the end, or do you think we should have got that third goal to secure all 3 points? And also, do you want a preview for the game at the weekend? Let me know all of that in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed the video. And as always, I will see you in the next one.